I studied live action, film, and animation at the Rhode Island School of Design. Um, I mainly focused on live action, and when I got out of school, I got a job just shooting video, mostly for like MTV and VH1, so it was like music related stuff. And then a producer that I met shooting on a film set or video set was basically like, you don't belong on a film set, you should be in graphics. So he hooked me up with a job at Sony Music Studio. There, they had a small graphics department, and we did promos for albums and concert graphics and a little bit of graphic work for MTV TV shows and stuff. So it was there that I learned most of the stuff about After Effects and TV production. Um, when I left there, I started freelancing around New York and freelanced and worked a little bit full time at different of the bigger studios in the city. And then I ran into a client from CMT who offered me a direct-to-client project. Um, and then from there, I just started working by myself or collaborating with friends. And then just sort of like naturally evolved into being a studio, independent studio. Um, yeah, and then just kind of got bigger from there. And then when I teamed up with Ted Cutsoft as my business partner, now we formed Block and Tackle, and now that's it. We're Block and Tackle. Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like I don't. I like live action, but I'm not that interested in it anymore. Really, I feel like it's kind of a drag. It's like all of the pre-production stuff. I feel like is a little bit daunting, and we often talk about live action ideas, but I think that actually Erin yesterday was saying like she uses humans as props, and I feel like that's kind of what we've been doing too. When we do anything that's live action, we're kind of thinking of like that humans as like elements to use in animation, either like hands doing things like tabletop kind of stop motion or um, yeah. Live action ideas come up now and then, but I sort of feel like I gravitate more towards animation for sure. I think I just was kind of confused actually. So, and yeah, I was interested in graphics, but didn't really know it was a career. It was just early in the early or late '90s, I guess. So I didn't really think of it as a career, and um, RISD is very much of like an experimental kind of art program, and so they're just kind of like encourage you to do whatever feels good for you. And I was just sort of getting turned on to a lot of sort of European auteur filmmakers like Bergman and Tarkovsky and stuff. So uh, I feel like I'd never seen stuff like that before, and it was really interesting for me. And I kind of like the poetic quality of that stuff. So basically just spent most of my time trying to emulate that kind of style. And I thought I would probably try to do that, make those kind of films for a while, but I didn't feel like I had anything really important to say necessarily. Like I like beautiful things and I like the way they feel, but I didn't have like a big message. So I think moving into animation and graphics feels a little bit better to me because it's mostly about sort of like the emotional quality of the things that you're creating and less about trying to tell like a really specific story. Sure. So I worked at Sony Music for about 2 years as permalance. That was in early 2000s. Um, Actually, like right around 9/11, basically there was no work anywhere, and they were really nice to just keep us around. We were doing like pro bono type work for a lot of those like concerts for America and all that kind of stuff. But so we stuck, I stayed there for quite a while. And then when I left there, I freelanced, not that many places really, at Loyal Casper, which they've kind of gotten bigger now. But at the time, I was their first freelancer. I worked on their first three projects, um, and then I worked at Eyeball, sort of permalance, and with two short full-time stints there. Uh, and I was there for maybe 2.5 years or so. And then when I left there, I had that one freelance job at MTV, which was for Viacom, and uh, that project is where I met the guy who gave me my first like direct-to-client job. So yeah, not that many places, mostly Eyeball. Um, I was a creative director there for a while. I mean, I started getting work direct for clients, and I was busy enough with that work on my own that I didn't really need to freelance. But because my studio was called Adam Gault Studio, I still got tons of freelance calls like, are you available tomorrow or whatever. So I'd always kind of had the intention of changing the studio name, but never really landed on a name that made sense or felt right. So it just kind of like kept going, 6 years of just Adam Gault Studio. And then when Ted started working with me full time, we were partners. We knew that we wanted to change the name of the studio. It just took us a while to kind of come up with something that stuck. And um, Ted felt, and I agree really that like if the name of the studio is your name, that it was maybe going to be harder for other people to feel like they had ownership in the long run. So we wanted to have choose a name that you know was sort of more generic. I don't think it's a generic name, but like wasn't specific to one personality. And then it also helps on the client side because if you're Adam Gault Studio and something terrible is happening with your project and the client's like, well, where's Adam? That's not great. So if it's block and tackle, it's easier to have other people that are taking charge of projects. It's not really a conscious decision to try to make things that feel different or different styles, but it's more about just like trying to figure out a solution that feels the most appropriate for whatever the assignment is. And maybe because we already have sort of a varied portfolio of different styles, like clients are more willing to ask us to do things that are in different styles. Like we're not often asked to do something that's the same as something we've done before. So I guess that's lucky for us. I feel like it makes things a little bit more interesting. Also, a little bit harder maybe because each project is sort of a new challenge, and you have to come up with new solutions of things. Like if you have a more consistent style, it's like maybe each time you're getting a little bit better at that thing and a little bit more efficient at that thing. And at a certain point, you're just like, oh, everything's easy, which I don't. I feel like nothing's ever easy. I feel like everything's always a real challenge, and we have to work really hard to figure out the best solution or the best way to approach something. So yeah, it's not really. I wouldn't say it's like a conscious decision, but it's something that we're kind of happy to own. Um, yeah, and then as far as the way we actually go about it, um, hopefully, mostly I guess when you're designing stuff in the studio, people are designing things in a way that they feel like they can execute. But if we haven't, we try not to sort of like close off any ideas unless it seems totally unrealistic for the production schedule. So if we have an idea for something that's outside of our own skill set, then we'll bring someone in that we feel like can do it. And we've also had designers on staff who are not animators, which I think is kind of interesting because they're often designing things that we're like, that looks awesome, but how are we going to do that? How are we going to make that work? And I feel like that kind of makes your animation more interesting when it's not necessarily that obvious how you're going to execute it. So it's Ted and I who are the creative directors and partners, and then Michael, who is our managing director, executive producer, Megan, who's our producer, and then we have the rest are designer animators, Will, Ichen, Alex, Gunkai, Dave, Cyrus. That might have been 9. But yeah, so yeah, it's a good sized team. I mean, I always felt like I always thought about around 10 is probably a good number. It feels like that you can have like a good variety of skills, and it still feels like manageable and everyone can kind of like be involved together. Uh, yeah, we're trying. I mean, I wouldn't say that anything's off the table completely, but I feel like we don't really want to have like a studio that's too big, where like there's different people who don't know what other people are doing. It feels a little bit unruly for me. On most of our projects, Ted or I will design, or at least concept ideas, and and then um, we try to we try to set up the project so that Ted or I is not assigned to a specific task for each project, because we end up usually working a little bit on everything. So if you're like, there's 5 shots and I'm going to do one and Ted's going to do one and then these other guys are going to do the other ones, inevitably things get backed up because we have too many other things to do. But we're both really hands-on, and I like to animate, and um, Ted's very, he's a technical, he understands sort of the technical stuff really well, so he's really good at setting things up for people and figuring out how something's going to get done. So yeah, we're both making stuff all the time. I feel like I have this like genuine belief that like anyone can kind of do anything if they really, really focus and like look hard and study what they're doing and how it could be better. And so I feel like a good way to sort of inspire people to um, do the work that you want them to do is to just be as engaged as possible. Maybe like really be willing to sit with people and figure stuff out together, and um, challenge people. I feel like people appreciate being trusted to do something that maybe they feel like they can't do. So if you're like, I want you to edit this thing, and I know you can do it, so like just go do it and try it out. And then if they come back and they don't feel like it's right or something, just talk to them about how it could be better, and then let them try it again. Because I think people want to achieve things, So if they feel like they're being trusted to do it, they want to like live up to that. Um, Maybe that also sounds like you're working people too hard or something, but I feel like that's important. Sort of anywhere, all over the place. I mean, mostly, pretty much everyone that works at the studio now, we have are people who have worked with us like freelance for a while, and then we ask them to stick around. Um, I think like a tryout period is really good for everybody. The studio, especially a smaller studio, has a sort of like a personality, and I think our studio is very quiet, so that doesn't necessarily work for everybody. Um, so I think a tryout period is really good, but finding people, we've done it. We've gone to schools to meet with students. People just recommending their friends and stuff. We've had job postings on Motionographer or whatever, and we've met with people from that. Um, yeah, finding really good help is I feel like one of the biggest challenges for a studio like ours. Stephanie's my wife. We met in college. So when we first got out of school, um, both of us were trying to kind of start a career and figure out, what we're going to do with ourselves. And she's an editorial illustrator, so and I love her work. I think it's really beautiful and very has a very like emotional quality to it, and she's very good at coming up with concepts that feel right but also surprising. And um, so when I was first starting to make animations and eager to have a reel that was just my own work and not, collaborative work from other studios and freelancing and stuff, it just made sense to animate the things that she was painting. So I just started, asking her, can I animate that? Can I animate that? And we had a few things where we'd make like a couple of years in a row. We made these like animated holiday greetings and just, tried to collaborate as much as possible. I think one of the things that was great for me is that sh- she's not an animator and didn't really think about animation when, she's making things for print. So when it came to like actually animating her work, uh, it was often not designed in any way that felt logical for animation. So that was a challenge. One, to figure out like how are you going to make this thing move that doesn't look like it should move, and then also just approaching things in a way that um, felt natural, I guess, for the way it was designed. Um, that I feel like that really influenced me a lot in the beginning because, well, number one, I think a lot of the work we do now, even at Block and Tackle, is sort of like illustration based in a way, but yeah, just sort of like maintaining the integrity of her work. And there'd be times that I would animate something and she would be like, that looks cool, but I would never show that for myself. And so then it makes me feel terrible. And then like I would be like, oh, I got to like redo it and figure out a way to do it so that she feels comfortable with it and still feels proud of it. Um, and I think that's a good lesson just for working with designers and also working with clients. Like you need them to feel satisfied that you're understanding their brand and what they're trying to communicate, and not just like throwing in animation because you can. You make things move just because you can. So I feel like that was a bit rambling. Is there? I don't know if I was that clear enough, but yeah. I don't feel like I have any. I mean, at this point, I don't not like any mentors like in the sort of traditional sense, but I feel like just the rest of the people in the studio are kind of like mentors for me in a way, and then, I guess maybe I am also for them. But I think some of the maybe the younger people in the studio, or not even. I think the other people in the studio, everyone has sort of different interests and different strengths, and so I think it's great to be able to bounce off ideas off each other, and that kind of helps everybody advance. So some people are sort of more into like design and the history of design, and famous designers, and can like reference art history and stuff, and we have people from different cultures who like their influences and interests are different than mine, so their reference will be stuff that I've not necessarily seen, so that's kind of gets you excited. And we have a couple of guys who are musicians, and so they're often like referencing interesting experimental music stuff that we haven't heard before, and that kind of gets you excited. And so I think those types of that sort of mix of people helps me sort of feel like I'm still sort of advancing and learning things and doing new things. But yeah, other than just sort of looking up to sort of famous artists that you like or whatever, it's like there's no one that I'm like going to for advice or anything like that at this point. Probably should have that though. I think that I'm kind of like a purist, I guess, with motion graphics. I feel like when someone says motion graphics, I really think of like moving typography. That's just how I think of it. But there's definitely like a real blend, and it's just even in our studio, there's like some character animation and some stop motion live action kind of stuff happening, and so it's definitely like a big mix. But for me, like the word motion graphics just is moving typography. Uh, there's some studios that someone might call motion graphics studios, and I think it's mostly because they are making animation for a specific type of market, that they can be labeled as motion graphics. But really, I think of them more as animation studios, like studios that are doing like really fantastic character animation spots that just happen to be short, like that I would say it's an animation studio. It just seems different to me, but motion graphics is kind of like a catch-all term at this point, I think. I don't know. I don't know if it's because I'm like old or something, but like I'm a little skeptical of social media in general. Like, uh, there was a time like when I was first out of school, and you know, I don't know. Basically, you just had to have a website. There wasn't really like you didn't have to manage like social media and all that kind of stuff. And I really sort of felt like um, I like the idea of being able to sort of survive on the quality of your work alone, and maintaining a certain amount of mystery about who you are, which is counter to this interview. But uh, and yeah, so I guess I'm a little bit skeptical of like putting everything about yourself online, and um, uh, yeah. And I mean, I like to look at stuff. I feel like for me, when I'm looking at like projects, on Vimeo, or like when we share stuff in the studio that we like, things that stand out for me are bits of animation that feel like something I haven't seen before, like a certain way of making a design move that feels sort of like out of tune with what you would think it would do. That stuff excites me mostly. I think it's like, oh, there's this like super classic serif font, but it's like animated like it's all modern, and like I get excited about that kind of stuff, I think. Um, yeah, as far as like, you know, latching onto trends and stuff, I'm sure we do that subconsciously a little bit, but I think we try not to think about trends too much, because when we're designing something, we're trying to design it for the actual project, and if you're just kind of sticking a trend on it, it doesn't really make sense. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if there's like there's like there were some specific trends like design wise I think happened, like I've seen over my career, like in the early 2000s, everything had a vignette or something, and putting you stuck a vignette on it, it felt better. Or there's like a kaleidoscopic kind of phase where everything was a kaleidoscope. Um, to me, it seems like the thing that I notice a lot now is that like there seems to be sort of more focus on the like craft of animation. Like people are really not afraid to work really hard at making things move in a really cool way, or like doing cell animation, or like approaching things in a way that are really labor intensive. I feel like for a long time when motion graphics was sort of early, it was enough to just have it move, and you relied a lot on making a few keyframes and easing it in a really basic way. But now it feels like everything needs to be like, or people are really sort of pushing the craft of animation a lot more, which I think is awesome. I feel like for me, the looking forward, I just want to try to make block and tackle kind of work as sort of efficiently as possible, so that we can make the work as good as possible. Um, like as you're sort of getting bigger, there's a chance of like you have to take more projects on, and that certain things might fall through the cracks, or like you can't focus on some projects as much as you might like to. So, um, we're really working at trying to have like a staff that is as strong as possible, so that every project can just be as successful as it can be. Um, there's certain types of work that we would like to maybe do that we haven't done. I think we've been really lucky with the type of network projects that we've been doing, but there tends to be a lot of deliverables. So the thought of doing some commercial work here and there is nice, because you're kind of can focus on one kind of like longer piece and really sort of like perfect that one thing. A little bit of long form work might be nice, film titles and stuff. Um, but for the most part, yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with just the way that things are going now, and as long as we can kind of keep up the quality of work that we've been doing, and make it better, then I'm happy. I mean, I feel like yeah, I feel like doing like a film title or something would be really fun. I mean, a lot of the work that we do, the promo work we do for TV, I feel like is conceptually similar, and the level of quality of work that we're doing would be appropriate. It's just really short, you know. So a lot of times we have ideas that just would take too long to kind of unfold, and it would be nice to have a little bit more time to do that. So I feel like that would be nice. Yeah, something something slow and super arty. I feel like it's like a phase and it's gonna pass and then it'll come back again in another 10 years. I really do. I don't feel like it's that satisfying. For me, it's just it's like we have a vibe actually in the studio, and I feel like you put it on and the technology is really amazing, and you're kind of surprised at how well it works, and then after 10 minutes you're kind of like, get me out of here. Yeah, I don't feel like it's something that I don't really want to have myself in that environment for that long. It doesn't really. We talked about we were working on a project that was going to be in VR, and it kind of fell apart. But we talked about like, oh, things are going to kind of fly around your head and kind of come together, and it's exciting. It's exciting to think about things sort of like enveloping you and stuff. But um, I don't feel like it's going to take over the world. I really don't. I think it's going to be like a little niche thing, and that I'm probably totally wrong, but I don't feel like I necessarily have to get that involved with it. Yeah, I mean, we're in New York. We're in Queens. I think we might be the only motion graphics studio in Queens. But so I feel like in a way I feel like a little bit isolated. We've had a studio there for 6 or 7 years now, and um, most of the other studios are in the financial district or in Soho or in Dumbo or something. So I'm not that connected with like how the actual industry goes, but in general, there's a lot of work. There's a lot of freelancers. I think freelancers in general are pretty busy. Um, there's definitely a great community. I mean, when you know, y- you can hook up with people pretty easy. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like I don't have my finger on the pulse of the New York motion graphics industry. But yeah, I don't. Well, none of the things. I'm not sure I can talk about any of the things we're actually pitching on. But I mean, I was saying earlier that FX has been really kind to us, and um, we work every fall on the graphics package for It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and Archer, and they basically told us we can have those jobs until the shows are done. So that's really exciting. And uh, with Archer is a bit of a challenge because the show changes every season, but Always Sunny FX's brief is basically like make it crazier than last year. So that's always a really fun challenge because I feel like every year I feel like we can't make it any crazier than it was last year, and somehow we managed to figure it out. Um, yeah, we're pitching on a couple of jobs for FX that would be really great. I'll tell you off camera. um, and um, yeah, no, we have a couple little like studio side projects that we've been talking about, but it's just really hard to find time for those. Um, so yeah. Oh, we did a well, news is really a hard one these days, but we redid the graphics package for elections for NBC News. So they've been rolling that out slowly, but basically it'll be like, you know, on election day, which is going to be it's going to be a big election. So on election day on NBC, we'll have, that'll be a big release for us.